Welcome back. I'm Dean Harry, Battlefield Guide here at Bentonville. We're going to pick our story up on March 20th, 1865. Major General William Tecumseh Sherman's right wing, the Army of the Tennessee, commanded by Major General Oliver Otis Howard, had returned from near Goldsboro and joined Major General Henry Warner Slocum's left wing at Bentonville. Confederate General Joseph Johnston, whose army had attacked and nearly defeated Slocum's left wing on March 19th, had been forced to fall back and form a defensive perimeter around the Mill Creek Bridge, Johnston's only escape route from Bentonville. General Sherman established his headquarters some distance behind Major General Frank Blair's 17th Corps line, which we're standing near now. Throughout the day, there had been skirmishing and probing attack on Johnston's defensive perimeter, which would be to my front. Sherman's headquarters, of course, several hundred yards to my rear. That night, Sherman sent the following message to Slocum. We struck the enemy on his left rear about noon and have pressed him pretty hard and have dislodged him from all his barricades except the line constructed against you. For our men found parapets from the Goldsboro Road well down to Mill Creek. Johnston hoped to overcome your wing before I could come to your relief, and having failed that, I cannot see why he remains. I would rather avoid a general battle, but in case of being forced to fight the enemy here, we must send our wagons to Kinston for supplies. Make no orders as yet till tomorrow reveals the purpose of the enemy. At midnight, Slocum sent a reply to Sherman. I can at any time move this wing to the Goldsboro Road, over here to my left, without a fight. The enemy has a good road leading from his position to Smithfield with entrenchments covering. In other words, Slocum saying, I can leave here if I need to, if you want me to, and Johnston can leave here too anytime he feels like it. The next day, March 21st, dawned a drizzly, cold, and dreary day. Sherman was in a foul mood. Relying on faulty reconnaissance from his cavalry, he had underestimated his opponent, and he knew it. He had wasted 2 days fighting a battle he did not want, and had only more dead and wounded encumbrances to show for it. Sherman was anxious for Johnston to retreat from Smithfield. He sent a message to General John Schofield, whose command was nearing Goldsboro. I thought Johnston, having failed as he attempted to crush one of my wings, finding he had not succeeded, but that I was present with my whole force, would withdraw. But he is not, and I must fight him here. At 2 a.m. on March 21st, Confederate General Evander Law sent a note to Wade Hampton's headquarters. My scouts have returned from the right of the enemy's line. They report no retrograde movement of the enemy. On the contrary, indications are he will fight today. Sherman's entire army stood united on Johnston's front, approximately 60,000 soldiers. Federal skirmishers pressed forward against the thin Confederate line, yet Johnston still clung to his tenuous position guarding the Mill Creek Bridge. Johnston, by way of explanation, sent a message to Robert E. Lee in Virginia. We are remaining here to cover the removal of our wounded to the railroad at Smithfield. The enemy is in entrenched position in greatly superior numbers to make further offensive impracticable. Sherman made his intentions for the day clear when he sent orders to Slocum to avoid a general engagement unless attacked. He then outlawed plans to withdraw the left wing from Bentonville. Sherman said, I will resume the march to Goldsboro. I will not attack Johnston. Fighting him will amount to nothing. I will close around him and let him attack me if he chooses, but tomorrow, meaning the 22nd, I will resume the march whether he attacks or not. Clearly, Sherman regarded Johnston as nothing more than a hindrance and was willing to withdraw both his wings and let Johnston declare victory. Heavy skirmishing took place all along the line on March 21st until that afternoon when Major General Joseph Mower, one of Sherman's favorite division commanders, surprised everyone by going for the knockout punch. At 8 a.m. that morning, Mower received orders to have his division in readiness to move out on the right flank, extending the line of the right wing. Mower's 1st Brigade under Brigadier General John W. Fuller had the advance, followed by the 3rd Brigade under Colonel John Tilson. By 11 a.m., Mower's division was on the march, heading almost due north, right in front of me. When the head of the column reached Blair's headquarters, right around here where we are, Mower ordered the column to halt and rode over to confer with Blair, who was on horseback awaiting him by the roadside. The two generals discussed the position Mower was to occupy. Blair sent his Inspector General, Lieutenant Andrew Hickenlooper, ahead with one of Mower's staff officers, Colonel Albert Cohen, to indicate the position they were to occupy. Colonel Charles Sheldon of the 18th Missouri, who was close enough to overhear the general's conversation, said Mower's parting words to Blair were, "I suppose, General, after I get into position, there would be no objection to my making a little reconnaissance." "None at all," Blair replied. And with that, Mower and his columnists proceeded along the road right behind us, right in front of me, and we're going to go to where they were supposed to go, the Sam Howell branch. All right, so we're picking up our story here on the assigned position for Mower's brigade, which is a ridge overlooking the Sam Howell branch, which would be down off to my left. Mower's column resumed the march past the end of the Federal line and continued on. A half-mile past the end of the line, they reached their assigned opinion on the brow of a hill overlooking a small stream, the Sam Howell branch. Some of Mower's soldiers observed with some uneasiness that a half-mile wide gap now existed between the Union right and Mower's left flank. Mower was not content to remain in his assigned position and became interested in a road which Cohen said led to the Confederate left flank, right over here. The column continued on until the 18th Missouri came to a ford on the Sam Howell branch, which would be at the bottom of this little hill. The column, so Mower decided it would be unwise to proceed any further with the brigade still in column and thereby vulnerable to attack. He left 5 companies of the 18th Missouri to guard the ford and countermarched a few hundred yards before halting it and facing it right. So now they would be on the top of this ridge up here off to my right, facing due west. Mower's 1,800-man brigade, of course, now faced almost due west, and before it stretched a wide swampy area, which would be right behind me. Fuller's brigade was on the right of the line, and Tilson's on the left. Fuller sent just 2 companies of the 10th Illinois forward as skirmishers, while Fuller deployed the entire 64th Illinois Infantry, about 350 men, many of them armed with brand new weapon of the day, Henry repeating rifles. Rifles the Confederates said unfair because they could load them on Sunday and fire all week, or their enemy could. Skirmishers had scarcely had time to deploy before the order forward was shouted down the line and the 2 brigades lurched forward. By noon, Mower's so-called little reconnaissance was underway. So we're going to see Mower's 1,800 men on this cold, rainy day going into the swamp behind us. And now we're going to go over to where they come out of the swamp, which would be near Confederate General Johnston's headquarters. We'll pick up the story there. We're picking up our story here near Confederate General Joseph Johnston's headquarters. On the Confederate side, opposite Mower's division, was a lightly entrenched line of Confederate dismounted cavalry, which would have been behind me. This line made no connection with Joseph Wheeler's command to their right. Soon after noon, Confederate vedettes reported the enemy advancing considerable force across the swamp in their front, which would be to my front right now. General Wade Hampton hurried to inform General Johnston and remind him that there were not sufficient troops nearby to withstand an assault. Aware of the importance of safeguarding the Mill Creek Bridge, which would be about 3/4 of a mile to our right here, his only line of retreat, Johnston began planning for an all-out defense of the bridge. Mower's brigade had great difficulty negotiating the swamp, but eventually emerged into open ground where we are. Mower's skirmishers immediately received artillery fire from Earl's battery and from the dismounted rebel cavalry. Mower himself immediately ordered his men to charge, and the Federals rushed forward with a shout. A thin line of Confederate cavalry broke for the rear, and Earl's battery hastily limbered up and retreated, leaving one caisson in Federal hands. Confederates rapidly formed a line of infantry and dismounted cavalry parallel to the Mill Creek Bridge, just east of the bridge, as the 64th Illinois, armed with Henry rifles, rapidly pushed towards Bentonville and overran Johnston's headquarters behind me, forcing the general to flee on foot. Mower's main line halted at the crest of the ridge east of Bentonville. While there, Mower was informed that the left of his command did not connect with the skirmishers on the right of the main Union line, off in this direction to my right front, General Manning Forces Division of the 17th Corps. Mower realized that he was too far extended and ordered his brigades to halt and move by the left flank to close on the 17th Corps. Mower had come to within a few hundred yards of the Mill Creek Bridge before halting and shifting to his left. As Fuller's brigade began to fall back towards the 17th Corps line, Confederate General Hardee launched a vicious counterattack with infantry and cavalry in a desperate attempt to save the Mill Creek Bridge, and along with it, General Johnston's army. J.K.P. Blackburn of the 8th Texas Cavalry, the renowned Texas Terry's Rangers, said, "With a charge rarely equaled and never surpassed in impetuosity and daring, the Texans under Doc Matthews' leadership threw themselves upon Mower's infantry with a recklessness that indicated a do or die on their part. The enemy were greatly confused and surprised for a moment and then began to give back. The Texans, still pressing, drove the enemy clear off the field, and the bridge was saved to us for our use." General Hardee himself led the charge of the 8th Texas, the 4th Tennessee Cavalry, routing Tilson's skirmishers and bearing down on the gap between Mower's two brigades. As Confederates fed more and more infantry and cavalry into the counterattack, Mower's two brigades became virtually surrounded by surging rebels. With no support nearby, Mower's line began to break. General Hardee's son, 16-year-old Willie Hardee, was mortally wounded during this charge. Fuller withdrew his brigade back to the line of entrenchments originally occupied by Confederate dismounted cavalry, where the Federals were able to repulse a rebel cavalry attack. Mower was eventually able to shift his two brigades closer to the main Federal line, and Confederates made no further attempts to drive them back. With the slackening of fire from Confederate counterattacks, Mower became eager to launch a second assault on the Confederate left. Sherman, however, had learned of the attack and was furious. "I don't like it at all," he fumed. "That might bring on a general engagement." Sherman later wrote, "I ordered him back to connect with his own corps, and lest the enemy should concentrate on him, ordered the whole rebel line to be engaged with a strong skirmish fire." To Mower's bitter disappointment, the opportunity to crush Johnston's army at Bentonville had slipped away. When General Howard, commanding the right wing, learned of Mower's charge, he too was furious at Sherman. Howard had been misinformed that Sherman had ordered the attack without first notifying him, a violation of the chain of command. Howard had immediately ordered Blair to advance his two remaining divisions to support Mower. But when Howard reached the 17th Corps position, he found Blair's men retiring, not advancing, and scolded Blair for disobeying his orders. Blair shot back, "The withdrawal is by Sherman's order." And now Howard was furious at Sherman for calling off Mower's attack, believing that he could not only whip Joseph E. Johnston, but capture him. 25 years later, Howard continued his criticism of Sherman when he wrote, "I do not think in the conduction of a battle with its details and changes, Sherman's judgment was as good as that of Sheridan, Thomas, or Grant. My memory reverts to the last operations at Bentonville, where I think Sheridan might have been more effective and successful in immediate results." When Mower received Sherman's order, he had nothing left to do but obey. He returned to the position overlooking the Sam Howell branch, made a connection with the right of the 17th Corps. Mower's charge was over, and it accomplished nothing. Mower had flinched at the critical moment when he had the Mill Creek Bridge within easy striking distance, but chose to shift his division left rather than advance. Had he advanced, he might have been cut off and overwhelmed, but it would have forced Sherman to come to his aid, thereby making Bentonville a decisive battle. Even though Sherman halted the attack Heavy skirmishing would continue throughout the darkness while a cold March rain continued to fall. That night, Joseph Johnston finally withdrew his army to Smithfield. After the war, Sherman explained, "At the moment, I preferred to make junction with Generals Terry and Schofield and Goldsboro before engaging Johnston's army, the strength of which was utterly unknown." Sherman also admitted, "I think I made a mistake there and should have rapidly followed Mower's lead with the whole right wing, which would have brought on a general battle, and it could not have resulted otherwise than successfully to us." So thus ends the story of the Battle of Bentonville.